Hello, I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. We've got one pretty big day in Texas for severe weather. Then we go through a very subdued pattern, but I will tell you why I think the second half of May will see an uptick in severe weather, both in the traditional areas of the Great Plains and increasingly in areas you would expect to see in June, which is expected because we're going to be finishing up the month of May here in just a couple of weeks. You're looking at the graphic for today, Sunday. This is an enhanced area of severe thunderstorm risk right in the heart of Texas. Almost couldn't put it more square in the middle. And it does include Dallas. I'll zoom in on that in a minute, but I did want to show you that the slight risk, or the level 2, does extend quite a bit to the east over into Mississippi, and there is a little bit of a marginal risk there from Orlando up to around Jacksonville and St. Augustine and those areas, Daytona Beach in Florida. But if we zoom in on Texas, you can see the level 3 area does include in San Angelo, Abilene, Waco, throw Austin in there too, and basically the Dallas, Fort Worth metro area. And what are the risks involved in this? Well, the tornado risk is actually minimal. 2% risk of a tornado there. We just don't have the low-level circulation impetus there. The profiles are not real favorable for supercells that can produce tornadoes. Of course, it's always possible, and that is exactly why there is a risk out there. But we've certainly seen higher this spring. Just takes one storm. Just be on the lookout there in central Texas. Nadocast looks at. It's a learning machine. It just looks in the past, looks at the current model data. It shows about a 3% chance in that area. So a little bit more. Also, it's kind of a curious area here from just south of Little Rock down to the central portion of Mississippi to see if that pans out with anything today. On the hail side, that is a little bit more risky. We have a 30% chance of a 1-inch hailstone or bigger in this area here in red. And the significance of this is their first level. So if you just look at the size of the hail here, and we're looking at 1 to 2-inch hail in those two gray areas, the hatched area there. So you're looking at about 83% of it is going to be below 2-inch, with some higher probabilities in there. But again, not the entire in most intense intensity scale they have, but still 2-inch hail, nothing to shake a stick at for sure. Nadocast does do a hail risk product, and they agree that the highest risk is there in that corridor from Dallas back to around San Angelo. They put a 30% chance and also a 10% chance of a 2-inch hailstone or greater in those striped areas. So again, it's pretty significant. If we just snap an image of severe hail risk hour by hour today, from 3 to 4, it's centered in this area right here from Lubbock down to the Midland, Odessa area, and then along the interstate there to Abilene. And I looked at subsequent hours after this, and it just kind of slides down like this throughout the late afternoon and early evening hours. There's also a wind risk with this too, a 30% chance of a severe wind gust, 59 miles per hour or greater, almost mirroring where the enhanced risk and the hail risk is located. If we look at CSU's model here, not very excited about tornado risk, but again, that hail risk more or less bullseye right there along the interstate there around Abilene and that area, with a little bit of a wind risk too. Then we move ahead to Monday. Things subdued quite a bit. Only a marginal risk in that dark green, the coastal areas of the Carolinas, southern Georgia, part of Alabama, and some of the Panhandle, and down from Jacksonville to Orlando once again for tomorrow. So they have thunderstorms in the area. It's kind of a washed out front. So today and tomorrow, there are some severe possibilities there, but nothing I think to get too concerned about. There's no tornado risk at all in the country tomorrow, and then the risks in the southeast are not hail. It's too warm aloft, and a little bit of wind risk there, maybe centered around the coastal areas of Georgia. Then we take a large break, like I said, really nothing worth showing until about Friday. And this is even the intensity level doesn't go up. It just gets a little more widespread here in the central plains on Friday. And then on Saturday, a little bit more widespread still. So there is room for the 15% probably to be popping up in the middle of that at some point. SPC, of course, has not pulled the trigger. They wouldn't even consider it until they see the probabilities going to 15%. At this distance, they would only do 15% of any severe weather or 30% of any severe weather, and that's all they would do. So there's nothing there that's screaming real trouble yet. But I did want to show you now the extended outlooks and why I think that severe weather will be on the uptick. This is the average from May 10th to the 16th. So basically, this is a supercell percentage chance accumulated over a 7-day period. So it does put the Red River area of North Texas and South Oklahoma in under that risk, and that is almost predominantly what's happening today. But I do want to show you a couple of things. The EPS is a really neat tool that the European model runs. It's the 500 mean. So it's an ensemble model, but it's also averaged over an entire week. And so it shows a big ridge of high pressure out over the western United States and a trough of low pressure over the east. Now, generally speaking, this kills severe weather chances anywhere in here. There's just a supply of fronts coming in with more stable air. That's why you see Florida is kind of where the fronts go to die, and that's why you still see some risk showing up there for the next couple of days. But this is the ridge that'll pretty much kill severe weather most of this week. I wanted to show you a backup to that. So the dew point anomalies are very, very low. So in other words, lower dew points than you would expect on average over the next week beginning Monday. Basically from Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, all the way into the Northeast. But you'll notice that there is kind of a return flow. So at least initially later this week, you're going to look for maybe an uptick in severe thunderstorms from the Front Range and maybe leaking into the plains a little bit. Then we go to the week after that. That's the 17th through the 23rd. Big uptick in supercell possibilities from Montana to Texas. And you'll notice there's a boundary here, Colorado and Kansas. That, I guess, is indicative of more troughing developing here and maybe some activity along several fronts that'll kind of go this far and stop. That's why that goes east a little bit. And now if you look at the 500 millibar mean for the week after that, the ridge shifts to the Great Lakes states and down into the southeast, while we now have this troughing out over the west. And of course, if you've watched me or any analysis of this, you know that troughing out west generally means that severe weather could be on the uptick, but this is kind of laid back a little bit. So the mean is back in California, not, let's say, here. That's why it's suggesting that the western high plains could be under more risk. And if you look at the dew point anomalies for that next week, so it's the week starting the 18th, so a week from this Monday and going a week forward, you see a high dew point anomaly now showing up. So the moisture return is coming back. And if we even go to NIU's site after that, you'll notice this persists through the May 24th through 30th period. So it looks like a persistent pattern for the second half of May of a trough out west. Where it sets up exactly is still under a lot of speculation, but I do think the high plains and maybe a little more east than that should be watching out for a pattern shift that brings severe weather back by the second half of May. Thanks for watching today's edition of Severe Thunderstorm Outlooks. This is published every day after the Morning Storm Prediction Center update. Also, remember to check that site off on day one because they update it fairly frequently. If you like this video, please like it. Also, you can subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.